gate is called a flood gate. Now that has to be manually closed when a hurricane approaches, and we have a flood wall.
Flood wall.
Already been done. Now once the storm completely passes up, some of that flood water did flow back out. But because those flood walls collapsed and the city flooded, it took almost a month to patch those flood walls and then to pump the rest of the water out of the city. So water sat here for almost a month. And also, if you look out here, you're probably going to see a whole lot of new rooftops. And that's because during the storm, a lot of these homes had roof damage. Now, these homes that had roof damage and had been left abandoned for the past 7 years, those homes have been continuing to receive damage, and we've been seeing those collapse all around the city. Now, what's happened is that over the past 7 years, rainwater has been seeping into those homes. And with the heat and humidity down here, the wood inside of those homes are slowly starting to rot. Now, as the wood starts to rot, the roof will start to cave. Once a roof starts to cave, it's usually not too much longer before a house will collapse completely down to the ground. So wherever you see empty lots around the city of New Orleans, chances are that was a house that collapsed down to the ground on its own, or maybe they went ahead and demolished it before it collapsed. Now we're going to turn off this main street. Now, as we're riding around here, you're going to see markings on the front of some of the homes in this area. That's because after the storm, they searched these homes for bodies, and when they did, they left the markings on the front. Now, if you look at the little greenhouse right here to the right, you're going to see markings on the front of that home. Now, the 914 on top of the circle is the date, and that stands for September 14th. Now, Katrina hit August 29th, so it took about 2 weeks to search this home. The TFW in the middle of the circle identifies the group that did the search and rescue. Now, after Katrina, we had many groups coming down here to help with search and rescue. Now, that stands for Task Force Wildcat, which is a West Virginia National Guard team. Now, the NE to the right side of the circle means not entered. Now, all they really did was ride around and look in the windows. The only time they physically broke into a home is if they saw a body, suspected a body, or if a family member called requesting somebody to break into the home. Now, the 0 at the bottom means no bodies found. Now, you can also see markings on the little brick house here next door to it. Now, it wasn't uncommon to go through these neighborhoods after Katrina and see numbers at the bottom. But the real sad part about it was, about a month after the storm, people were allowed to come back to their neighborhoods to check on their homes, to check on other family members. They would go into these homes and still find bodies in these homes. Also over here on the left, look how creative this guy gets when he decorates his yard over here. He is so creative. He's usually out there every morning smiling and waving. I don't see him there this morning. But he changes that up every couple of days. I stopped and talked to him one day, and he told me he found a lot of that stuff just floating up all around town after Katrina. He calls it the Katrina Band House. This family has been working with the kids of New Orleans for years, trying to teach them music, trying to keep the jazz music alive here in the city. Also trying to help keep crime down by keeping the kids off the streets. Now, once they complete that music program, they get a free instrument. And today, there's hundreds of kids on that waiting list today. Now, if you look over here to the left, you're going to see this empty lot on the corner. This is where a house had collapsed down to the ground. Also on the left, you're going to see that blue house. They just recently started working on that home, which is always a good thing. Now look over here to the right, you're going to see this white house. It's been abandoned ever since Katrina. And look at the roof on this home. Look how it's caving in the middle over there. It gets worse every single day. But like I said, once a roof starts to cave like that, it's not going to be too much longer before that whole house will collapse down to the ground. Now, one of the neighbors has been sprucing the front of this home up. She's been painting, planting flowers, not exactly sure why, 'Cause I don't think there's any way they can salvage this house. Look at the other side of the house. You can see where the whole back wall is caved in over there. Now the brick house next door to it here on the right, they just recently raised that home up. And that's what a lot of people are starting to do today, raise their homes up a little bit higher to prevent receiving future floodwaters in their homes. To rebuild, which is always a lovely sight to see. Now the brick house right here on the right corner, that's been abandoned ever since the storm. And it was actually up for sale for a good while, and somebody recently purchased it. They're not wasting any time at all to rebuild over here. Repair this home. They even did an addition to it. But if you look at the two houses behind the brick house here on the right, they're also rebuilding here. And here it is, 8 years after Katrina, we're still rebuilding down here. But it was sold mostly to free people of color. Now, free people of color owned a great deal of real estate here in the city of New Orleans back in 1812, and all that was way before the Civil War. Now, back then, free people of color even owned slaves here in the city. Song was Mother-in-Law. I know most of you know that song. Now he died a couple of years ago, but Kermit Ruffins just recently took over that lounge. Also coming up here on the left, you're going to see some painted columns. And this is an art project started by the New Orleans African American Museum. And they're painted for Black history here in the city. Now, if you look at the pink column right over here to the left, you're going to see a beautiful smiling face of Mr. Fats Domino right there. Now, he still lives here in the city of New Orleans. He used to live a little further down in the 9th Ward, and his house was heavily flooded. He had about 8 feet of flood water in his house. Now, if you want to leave anything on the bus, you're welcome to do so. I will be closing the bus up. Now watch your step when you exit.
There's not this gate, but the next one over, there's a little chef's corner up there. Some of our local restaurant families have tombs up there. Also Gower, who is a famous architect here in the city.